Hello, guys, and good day to all of you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Isang pinagpalang araw po sa ating lahat and welcome po sa ating apologetics video for today. So far, as this recording last week, Holy Week. And then, I even asked some atheist groups sa point na yan na ano yung masasabi nila concerning to the resurrection of Jesus. So far, may nakita kong video from Skeptical Pinoy na kung saan na-discuss niya yung 5 reasons daw kung bakit imposible raw ang muling pagkabuhay ng ating Panginoong Jesus. So, at the end of this video, we will present reasons why the resurrection of Jesus really happened. So sa ngayon, pakinggan natin ang mga remarks ni Skeptical Pinoy. So let's listen.
Yung pinaka-foundation ng Christianity. Marami nagsasabi na isa daw tong milagro na nagpasimula sa Christian faith. Pero pag in-examine natin ang event na to, gamit ang science at logic, ang idea na pwede mangyari ang isang resurrection ay nagiging illogical o hindi makatwiran. Sa video na to ay debunk natin ang konsepto ng muling pagkabuhay at
So, nagsimula siya kaagad-agad na kung titignan daw yung science and logic daw, we will see na imposible raw yung nangyaring muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Jesus. Which is, dito pa lang makikita na natin yung fallacy dito. Okay? Kasi, dito pa lang nag-presuppose na itong si Skeptical Pinoy na ang lahat ng bagay ay natural lamang. Wala raw matatawag na supernatural. But is it? So, let's continue.
i-demonstrate din natin kung bakit hindi ito pwede maging totoo gamit ang science.
So, ironically for all of those who are watching this, it's true na nakatulong ang science. Okay, fine. Pero, mag-aminan tayo dito, hindi lahat ng bagay sa buhay ay masasagot lamang ng agham. Ironically, kay Skeptical Pinoy, he was already committing in a presupposition of what was called scientism. Not the real science, so to speak. Okay, baka
Resurrection na imposible base sa
Wait lang. Saan tayo? Dito tayo. Okay. He claimed to be a former Roman Catholic, kung saan tinatalakay daw niya yung religion. Ironically, I don't know for sure kung ano yung pinaka-background nito. However, kung gagamitin niya po yung view na yan para mapatunayan na totoo ang atheistic worldview, he was already doing his good job here.
Number 1. According sa science, ang konsepto ng resurrection ay imposible base sa laws of nature. Kung titignan natin sa biology, reversible ang process ng pagkamatay dahil humihinto ang mga vital functions dahil sa pagbubulok ng mga cells sa katawan natin. Ang ideya na ang isang namatay ay muling mabubuhay pagkatapos na magdeteriorate biologically ay nagko-contradict sa primary principles ng biology. Meron din tayong tinatawag na physical laws o batas pisikal. Silang nag-govern ng pagagnas at pagkabulok ng katawan natin. Kaya imposible ang muling pagkabuhay dahil nilalabag nito ang thermodynamics at entropy. Pangalawa,
Cut it out. Okay, ang first daw, kaya daw imposible yung resurrection ay dahil sa tinatawag na law of entropy or second law of thermodynamics. However, he forgot something. Bagamat totoo yung kanyang claim dyan, baka nakakalimutan niya po na if nabanggit niya yung second law of thermodynamics. Wait a minute. Mukhang babalik tayo sa basic principle concerning to the reasons why we believe that God exists. Isa na po sa evidence dyan yung second law of thermodynamics. Kaya dyan, na-debunk na niya ang ilang paliwanag ng ilang atheists na ang universe daw ay eternal. Ito, sa mundong ito, lahat naman mapaparam. Lahat mamamatay. Ito yan. But if God exists, if miracles are possible, if Jesus had risen from the dead, mangyayari talaga ang tinatawag na muling pagkabuhay, so to speak. Ang problema dito sa claim na ito ni Mr. Skeptical Pinoy ay ito. He was already assuming na, walang himala. Dahil dyan, ito. But the kind of argument will never work. Kung yan lang maging rason kung bakit madedebunk daw yung resurrection ni Kristo, that kind of argument will never work. O, tingnan natin yung second.
Ang resurrection narrative ni Jesus ay may isang malaking pagkakamali.
How does he know na mayroon daw malaking pagkakamali? Can you explain that to us?
Ni-ignore nito ang consciousness sa utak natin.
Consciousness in our minds. But if atheism is true, saan ba talaga pirming nanggaling yung consciousness? Saan ba galing yan? Kasi if atheistic worldview is true, ang mind ay brain din. Ang brain ay mind din. Paano may papaliwanag yan? Dito pala mahalata mo talaga na nag-assume na siya ng atheistic worldview dito. As if, lahat lamang ng bagay na nakikita natin, yun lang ang totoo. Anyway, tuloy natin ang kanyang claim. Paano niya nasabing malaking pagkakamali raw yan bukod dito?
Nasabi sa atin ng neuroscience na ang consciousness ay nag-emerge dahil sa complicated neural process at ang kamatayan ng kahit na sino ay nagreresulta sa pagtigil ng brain activity. Imposibleng magkaroon ulit ng self-awareness ang kahit na sino pagkatapos nitong mamatay. Karamihan sa mga resurrection claims ay walang scientific basis at
Excuse me? No scientific basis? Although correct ka dyan, Ginoo. Kaso nakakalimutan nyo po yung tinatawag na eyewitness testimony, excruciating testimony, expecting testimony, and many more. Katunayan, mag-aminan tayo dito, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy, if you're listening to me. Hindi lahat ng bagay ay may papaliwanag ng biology, ng ano pa, ng astronomy, ng physics. You even quoted this passage. For what reason?
kinokontradict nito ang neuroscience.
It doesn't. In fact, pinatutunayan lamang dito when it comes to the fact na tayong mga tao ay unique pagdating saan? Consciousness. Nabanggit mo yung consciousness. Issue of morality, so to speak. Paano mo nasabing kinokontra nito dahil lang ba sa nag-assume ka na hindi totoong miracles? Is that what you're saying?
Pangatlo, ang resurrection accounts na nasa gospel ay may napakaraming contradiction at
Oh, not again. Contradictory na naman daw.
inconsistencies. Ito ang dahilan kung bakit unreliable ang Bible.
Unreliable baka mong Biblia. Alam mo po, Ginoong Skeptical Pinoy, listen to me. If you have, kung meron po tayong good reasons dyan, ang dami po nating evidence. Tingnan nyo ha. Ano yung mga ebidensya para sa resurrection? First, yun lamang yung tanging explanation kung bakit yung tomb na pinaglagakan ng mga labi ni Kristo ay wala. Not only was Jesus' dead body never found, but his grave clothes were left there empty, including the head clothes folded up in a place by itself. The tomb was guarded by Roman soldiers under the pain of death. So, there was no way the body could have been stolen. And even if it could have been moved under the guard of Roman soldiers, sino kumuha? Saan napunta? Pangalawa, paano mo po maipapaliwanag ang mga positive proof for the resurrection na yan? Sa pamamagitan ng ano? Numerous appearances of Christ in the same physical body now alive to hundreds of witnesses. Kabilang na po dyan yung mga unbelievers at skeptics. Yamang nasabi mo na yung resurrection accounts daw ay marami daw kontrahan. Are you talking about kung ilang mga babae or whatever? Kaso, your claim does not work. Bakit? Okay, sabihin natin na ganyan eh. So what? At the end of the day, both Matthew, Mark, Luke, John are in agreement that point 1, Jesus died by crucifixion. Point 2, he was buried mostly in a private tomb. Point 3, soon afterwards, the disciples were discouraged, bereaved, and despondent, having lost hope. Point 4, Jesus' tomb was found empty very soon after his interment. Point 5, the disciples had experiences that they believed were actual appearances of the risen Jesus. Point 6, due to these experiences, the disciples' lives were thoroughly transformed. And mind you guys, they were even willing to die for their belief. Pang ilan na to? Pang 7 na to. The proclamation of the resurrection took place very early from the beginning of church history. The disciples' public testimony and preaching of the resurrection took place in the city of Jerusalem, where Jesus had been crucified and buried shortly before. Bukod pa dito, the gospel message centered on the preaching of the death and resurrection of Jesus. Sunday was the primary day for gathering and worshiping. James, the brother of Jesus and a skeptic before this time, was converted when he believed he also saw the risen Jesus. And just a few years later, Saul of Tarsus became a Christian believer due to an experience that he also believed was an appearance of the risen Jesus. Dito po mapapatunayan na based on those facts, pinapatunayan dito na ang New Testament story ay hindi po batay sa myth o legend, hindi po ito kasinungalingan, at lalong hindi po ito embellishment. Now, kung ipipinpoint niya yung mga so-called na mga kontrahan daw, nako, he forgot something. Lalo na po, kung titingnan natin yung mga historical data, for example, kahit sa outside na lang ng Bible, makikita na may differences talaga. However, merong iisang punto dyan, merong iisang topic dyan. Ganoon din po sa four gospel accounts. Ngayon, kung i-assume dito ni Mr. Skeptical Pinoy na yung four gospel accounts daw ay may kontrahan, ito ang tanong ko para sa iyo. Kung nakikinig ka o kung mapanood mo man yung video, please sagutin mo. Paano mo po nalaman na kontrahan yun? Pangalawa, sapat na bang rason yun para sabing imposible ang muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Hesus? At pangatlo, paano kung talagang nangyari yun? Anong gagawin niyo po? Kayo po ay mananampalataya or you will go on to continue to be skeptical in Christianity but you are not skeptical in your skepticism? I hope you will answer the question in the comment section.
Kung ibabase natin ito as a historical account, maraming discrepancy sa mga detalye. Katulad na lang ng kung ilang babae ang bumisita sa libingan ni Jesus.
Ironically, kahit ilan man yan, at the end of the day, ang unang eyewitnesses, mga babae, which is one of the embarrassing details po dyan. Bakit? Kasi first and foremost, ang mga babae ng first century sa Jewish community, mababa sa community. Ni hindi po tinatanggap ng korte ng mga Hudyo yung testimonya ng mga babae. However, tatanungin ko po kayong lahat. Kung talagang embellishment lang yun, kung talagang dinagdag, di sin sana. Take note Mateo, Marcos, Lucas 1, mga lalaki yan. Di sana sasabihin, mga lalaki ang unang nakawitness, pero hindi. Bagamat ito po'y embarrassing, they admitted for themselves based on their writings, based on the eyewitness accounts, na ang unang mga nakasaksi ay mga babae. So still, your argument, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy, does not even work at all.
Na kung bakit si Jesus, ang naisang mahirap, ay binigyan ng libingan na gawa sa bato, na dapat lang sa pangmayaman o royalty, na kung meron nga ba talagang actual na libingan na gawa sa bato. At
Come on, my friend. Aral-aral din ng Jewish accounts dyan. Jewish culture. Come on.
pwede ba natin itong ma-demonstrate bakit magulo ang sequence of events pagkatapos ng supposedly resurrection ni Jesus?
How did you know that? Even if yung mga secondary details dyan ay may differences, it does not mean na hindi nangyari yung resurrection na siyang pinaka-main event. Still, Jesus had risen from the dead.
Marami pang inconsistencies at lahat ng ito ay kaduda-duda.
Kaduda-duda siguro sa'yo kasi you don't want it to be true.
So kung gaano ba talaga ka-accurate at reliable ang resurrection narratives?
Do you want me to debate about the reliability of the New Testament? Contact me. Let's have a discussion about this in the future.
Pang-apat, maraming ibang explanation na pwede magpaliwanag sa kung bakit ganun ang naging reaction ng mga tao after mamatay ni Jesus.
Okay, parang alam na natin yung mga gagawin o mangyayari dito. Hallucination theory ba yan? Pero tingnan muna natin si Mr. Skeptical Pinoy.
Yung mga reported appearances ni Jesus after niya mamatay ay pwedeng may paliwanag ng psychological phenomena
Psychological phenomena raw Sige nga.
katulad ng grief-induced hallucination,
Sabi na, hallucination. Sabi na eh. Sorry for laughing Pero alam nyo guys, if you have already watched some of my apologetics videos here in Christianity Makes Sense channel, makikita nyo po yung mga claim na ito tulad ng hallucination theory kanyan, it will never work. Kasi ang hallucination ay para sa isang tao lang. Imposible naman na mag-hallucinate ang napakaraming tao na nakasaksi sa muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Jesus. Like, biruin mo 500 people? Really?
group hysteria, at confirmation bias.
Ironically, confirmation bias baka mo. Ito listen, una kong pinanood tong video na ito kanina, nahalata ko talaga yung tinatawag na bias niya dito saan? Naturalistic position. Siya mismo ang umamin. Bagamat hindi po direct. But he admits na imposible yung resurrection kasi walang miracle. Doon pa lang, ini-ignore na po niya yung mga evidence na yan. Lalo pagka wala sa mismong kanyang worldview. Therefore, yung kanyang ina-explain dito ay walang sense, so to speak.
Also, ang mga practice ng paglibing dati ay iba. Gumagamit sila ng communal tombs at minsan nire-relocate nila yung mga bangkay sa ibang libingan. Pwede ito magpaliwanag sa narrative na empty tomb or baka hindi nilibing sa tombstone si Jesus.
Evidence nga po, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy. Kasi tingnan mo, Jewish culture na po mismo yan. Pinipinpoint na noong time na yan, yung mga napako sa krus na namatay doon, bagamat merong mga studies na yung iba ay tinatapon po sa lugar na kung saan andun yung merong mga ibon, mga buitre doon whatsoever. Meron ding mga indications na kung saan yung bangkay ng mga taong napako doon ay inililibing sa tamang libingan, sa tamang posisyon. Come on. Again, your argument doesn't work either.
Kasi hindi naman siya mayaman o royalty.
Ano ba yun? Bakit? Ito ba'y patunay mo na hindi talaga muling nabuhay si Kristo? Ang baba.
At imposibleng ma-afford niya yung ganong kabaong. Kaya
Yeah, unless you have read about Joseph of Arimathea who willingly decided na ilagay yung bangkay ni Kristo sa libingan na pagmamay-ari niya. I have no idea if he read the gospel accounts. I don't know for sure. Pero do your homework again, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy, if you are listening to me.
walang laman yung libingan in the first place. Hindi porket walang laman yung kabaong ay nag-resurrect na agad. He supposedly nasa loob nun. Ang gusto ko lang sabihin ay maraming naturalistic explanation sa mga pangyayari ito na hindi kailangan ng miracles, resurrection, or supernatural.
See, may confirmation bias na siya sa naturalism. Guys, he said, marami daw, quote-and-quote, naturalistic explanation daw. Siya, sagutin natin ito. Una, hallucination theory. Na-hallucinate ba yung mga disipulo? Perhaps they sincerely thought they had seen the risen Christ, but instead, actually, naka-experience daw sila ng hallucination. Kaso ang problema, una, ang hallucination ay hindi na-experience ng grupo ng mga tao, kundi isa-isang tao lang. Individuals have dreams, and groups do not. Hallucinations work the same way. If rare psychological conditions exist, an individual may have a hallucination, but his friends will not. And even if they do, they will not have the same hallucination. Pangalawa, hindi mag-work yung hallucination theory. Bakit? Jesus did not appear once to just one person. Nagpakita siya sa napakaraming tao. Sa loob ng 40 araw. Nakita siya ng mga lalaki at mga babae. Nakita nila ang Panginoong Jesus na naglakad, nakipag-usap, kumain. Nakita siya sa loob at sa labas. He was seen by many and by few. And they were not seeing a hallucination or a ghost. Because on 6 of the 12 appearances of Jesus was physically touched or he ate real food. Kaya kung ang isa sa mga argument mo to disprove the resurrection ay hallucination theory, hindi po magwo-work 'yan. Bukod dito, yung existence ng empty tomb ay isa pa sa second fatal flaw. Ina-assume kasi ni Mr. Skeptical Pinoy na kaya namang ipaliwanag yan ng naturalistic point of view. Pero alam nyo po, guys, wala ni isang naturalistic view ang nagtagumpay. Wala ni isa. If the 500 plus eyewitnesses did have the unprecedented experience of seeing the same hallucination at 12 different times, then why in the world didn't the Jewish or Roman authorities simply parade Jesus' body around the city? So here's my challenge to our our skeptic friend. Ipakita niyo po sana yung bangkay ni Kristo. Doon po babagsak ang Christianity. Yan po ang assignment ninyo if you did. Pero sasabihin ko po sa inyo, malabo yan at hindi po yan magagawa. Why? Kasi yung katawan ni Kristo wala sa lupa. He rose from the dead. Also, mali ba yung libingan? Kasi malamang magsasabi, baka mali yung libingan na nakita or what? Pero meron namang fatal flaws yan. Una, if the disciples had gone to the wrong tomb, the Jewish or Roman authorities would have gone to the right one and paraded Jesus' body around the city. Excuse me, guys. Ang libingan na pinaglagakan ng mga labi ni Kristo ay alam ng mga Hudyo. Kasi sarili po nila itong libingan. Ito po ay mula kay Joseph of Arimathea na miyembro ng Jewish Sanhedrin. And the tomb was known by the Romans because they placed guards there. As William Lane Craig notes, the wrong tomb theory assumes that all of the Jews and Romans had a permanent kind of collective amnesia. Is what they're saying? Isa pa, even if the disciples did go to the wrong tomb, the theory does not explain how the risen Jesus appeared 12 different times. Sa madaling salita, the appearances must be explained, not just the empty tomb. Notice, the empty tomb did not convince most of the disciples, with the possible exception of John, that Jesus had risen from the dead. It was the appearances of Jesus that turned them from scared, scattered, skeptical cowards into the greatest peaceful missionary force in history. This is especially true of the devout enemy of Christian, Saul. He was not only unconvinced by the empty tomb, he was persecuting Christians very soon after the resurrection. It took an appearance of Jesus himself to turn Paul around. It seems that James, the brother of Jesus, who is a skeptic, also was converted after an appearances of Jesus. Guys, imposible rin po yung wrong tomb theory. Paano naman yung soon or apparent death theory? Yung ina-argue na hindi raw namatay si Kristo sa krus ng Kalbaryo. Pero take note ha, ang mga kaibigan at maski man mga kaaway ni Kristo, they are all aware they have witnessed that Jesus died by crucifixion. Pangalawa, bukod dito, Jesus was embalmed in 75 pounds of bandages and spices. It is highly unlikely that Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus would have mistakenly embalmed a living Jesus. Bukod dyan, even if everyone was wrong about Jesus being dead when he went into the tomb, then how would a badly injured and bleeding man still be alive 36 hours later? He would have bled to death in that cold, damp, dark tomb. And even if he did survive the cold, damp, dark tomb, paano alisin ni Kristo? Supposedly, sabihin natin hindi nga namatay si Kristo. Paano niya alisin yung mga nakatali sa kanya? Tapos bubuhatin niya yung napakabigat na bato? Really? Paano makukumbinsi ni Kristo? Halimbawa, yung mga disipulo niya na natatakot, nagkalat sa kung saan-saan, mga skeptical at mga duwag. Tapos sabihin niya na siya muling nabuhay kahit sugat-sugat. Come on! At saka, actually, ito pa yung isa pa. Ninakaw daw yung bangkay ni Kristo. Pero ironically, Una, indirectly inaamin na wala po yung bangkay ni Kristo. Pangalawa, paano po ito magagawa ng mga disipulo na noong time na yon takot, nalulungkot kasi namatay yung kanilang master. 'Di ba? Kaya kung tutusin, mga kaibigan, marami pa yan eh. Marami pa tayong maipepresenta ng mga skeptical theories na ma-debunk po natin yan by God's grace. Na, ito pa. Actually, meron akong nabasa na article mula sa, na kung saan, ang title yata yun, Debunking the Christ Myth. But as of now, gagawa pa tayo ng mga videos dyan about this. Pero ang argument kasi nito, lalo na sa Zeitgeist o si Richard Carrier or others, the New Testament writers copied pagan resurrection myths. Kaso, the New Testament is anything but mythological. Unlike pagan myths, the New Testament is loaded with eyewitness evidence and real historical figures. And it's corroborated by several outside sources like Josephus, Tacitus, and others. C.S. Lewis, a writer of myths himself, has commented that the New Testament stories do not show sign of being mythological. Ano pong sabi ni C.S. Lewis na, mind you, dati po siyang atheist. Sabi niya, all I am in private life is a literary critic and historian. That's my job. And I'm prepared to say, on the basis, if anyone thinks the Gospels are either legends or novels, then the person is simply showing his incompetence as a literary critic. I've read a great many novels and I know a fair amount about the legends that grew up among early people. And I know perfectly well the Gospels are not that kind of stuff. Isa pa, bukod dito, the pagan myth theory cannot explain the empty tomb, the martyrdom of the eyewitnesses, or the testimony of the non-Christian writings. Pangatlo, ancient non-Christian sources knew that the New Testament writers were not offering mythical accounts. Sabi nga ni Craig Blomberg, the earliest Jewish and pagan critics of the resurrection understood the gospel writers to be making historical claims, not writing myth or legend. They merely disputed the plausibility of those claims. Ikaapat pa, no Greek or Roman myth spoke of the literal incarnation of the monotheistic God into human form by way of a literal virgin birth followed by his death and physical resurrection. Ang mga Griego, polytheist, hindi po mga monotheist. Kaya yung mga Griego noon, they believe in reincarnation into a different mortal bodies. Pero ang mga Kristiyano, especially in the New Testament accounts, they believe in resurrection into the same physical body, made immortal. Isa pa, the first real parallel of a dying and rising God does not appear until AD 150, more than 100 years after the origin of Christianity. So, if there was any influence of one on the other, it was the influence of the historical event of the New Testament on mythology, not the reverse. The only known account of a god surviving death that predates Christianity is the Egyptian cult god Osiris. Sa myth na yan, Osiris is cut into 14 pieces scattered around Egypt, then reassembled and brought back to life by the goddess Isis. However, Osiris does not actually come back to physical life, but becomes a member of a shadowy underworld. Sa obserbasyon nga ni Gary Habermas and Michael Licona, this is far different than Jesus' resurrection account, where he was the gloriously risen Prince of Life who was seen by others on earth before his ascension into heaven. At saka, ito pa, even if there are myths about dying and rising gods prior to Christianity, hindi po yan nangangahulugan na kinopya ito ng New Testament writers. Sa totoo lang, ang dami po nating may ipepresenta ng mga reasons kung bakit yung mga skeptical na mga theories na pinepresenta, yung ganyan sinasabi niya na natural explanation daw para sa empty tomb, lahat ng yan bagsak. So far, resurrection pa rin. Yung muling pagkabuhay pa rin ni Kristo ang pinakamatibay na explanation dyan. Anyway, let's continue.
Lastly, ang pinaka-importante sa lahat, walang empirical evidence sa resurrection ni Jesus. Ang narrative accounts ng resurrection ay nasa New Testament, na binasa sa mga religious texts na sinulat ng maraming dekada pagkatapos mamatay ni Jesus.
Huh? Really? Even though based on evidence, most of the New Testament writings were written before 70 AD? Come on. You're not doing a good job for that, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy.
Ulitin ko, yung mga religious texts na related sa resurrection narrative ay sinulat maraming dekada after mamatay ni Jesus. Walang contemporaneous historical documentation, wala ding corroborating evidence.
Okay, sure ka. Paano yung mga non-Christian writings like Josephus and Tacitus? Are you using Christ myth theory arguments again?
Na outside source.
We, really?
Ibig sabihin, ang evidence na sinasabi nila ay nanggaling lang sa Bible. So,
Lang sa Bible? Really? Do your homework again, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy. We've got sources outside the Bible na sumusuporta dyan. Na yung mga disipulo ni Kristo, they saw the risen Jesus. Na yung mga historians tulad ni Josephus, Tacitus, at kahit yung mga skeptics like Celsus, Marabar Serapion, Pliny the Younger, they're not Christians. And yet they recognize kung ano ang paniniwala ng mga unang Kristiyano. Mga una hanggang ikatlong siglo.
ginagamit nila yung Bible para mapatunayan na totoo yung Bible. Parang ginamit mo na din
Ah? Really? Are you talking about so-called circular reasoning? My friends, we are just analyzing the facts concerning to the resurrection na nagpapatunay na talagang may nangyaring muling pagkabuhay at totoo na reliable ang Biblia. Mind you, manuscript evidence, internal evidence, external evidence. O nag-assume na naman dito si Mr. Skeptical Pinoy.
ng comic books para mapatunayan na totoo si Superman.
Bukod sa false analogy, strawman na naman.
So wala silang evidence na hindi galing sa Bible. Basically, ang meron lang sila ay mga claims.
Hindi ba yung sinasabi mo rin po ay mga claims with no evidence?
At alam naman natin na ang claims ay hindi evidence.
Yes, it's true. Ang problema, yung mga claim na yan ay dapat pa rin patunayan based on what? Evidence. And most of your claims are nothing but junks. You see, my friends, dyan po mapupunta lamang kumbaga sa basurahan ang ganyang mga argumento. Lalo napansin na natin kaagad na may presupposition siya na hindi totoo na may Diyos, hindi totoo na may himala. Yun po ang nangyayari dyan.
In conclusion, ang
Sabi, ang muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Jesus ay depicted sa Christian theology ay imposibleng mangyari scientifically at wala raw evidence na nagsuportas na nangyari sa ganoong event. Unless, my friend, you are talking about historical data. Hindi lahat ng bagay ay may naipapaliwanag ng siyensya. You're just assuming scientism. That's all you can do. Sabi pa niya, kaysa naman natanggapin na lang natin yung mga supernatural explanation, mas maganda kung mag-rely tayo sa paggamit ng logic at reason para mas maunawaan natin ang kasaysayan. Ironically, dapat, kung ako magpapayo na ganito lang. Imbes na tanggapin na lamang natin yung mga natural explanation, mas maganda kung mag-rely tayo saan? Sa paghanap ng mga historical data. Tama, andyan na yung logic and reason. Pero in atheistic worldview, saan galing yung logic? Saan galing yung reason kung walang Diyos? Diyan pa lang debunk na to eh. At saka sabi niya, hindi raw isang historical event kundi mythology. Eh kaso, pag-usapan na natin, hindi po mythology ang resurrection accounts. Ang totoo niyan, he was very, very desperate to disprove the resurrection accounts. Ang kaso, ironically, we have good reasons to believe that Jesus had risen from the dead. So here is my challenge to you, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy. Para patunayan mo talaga na walang nangyaring muling pagkabuhay, patunayan mo talaga yan by means of what? Hanapin ang bangkay ni Kristo. Doon babagsak ang Christianity. Pero, I assure you, Mr. Skeptical Pinoy, bukod sa 5 reasons na sinabi mo, na-debunk na natin ngayon lang, hindi mo makikita yung bangkay niya kahit kailan. Bakit? Dahil si Kristo Jesus ay talagang muling nabuhay. So here is my last question to everyone, especially to our atheist friends who are listening. If Jesus had risen from the dead, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? Nasa sa iyo pong pagpapasya, mga kapatid.